What's up, my soul family? For those of you who are new here, if this is your first time, welcome. My name is Chelsea Curtis. I am a reality architect and interdimensional channel, a psychic medium, and a galactic ambassador. And I know that's all a bunch of jumble to some of you. But today I'm going to talk about the reality architect aspect of that and my work with timelines. I told you guys a couple of weeks ago that I was going to do a Q&A talking about my work with timelines, what I've learned about timelines, and you guys threw some really great questions at me. So let me pull those up. We're going to talk about those today. I'm here. I've got my tea. I'm in my office, which you guys have never seen me in before because this is a new channel and I'm a mom and I film wherever I can film. When inspiration strikes, sometimes spirit is like, hey, yo, we have a message for you and we need you to make a video right now. And I'm like in my living room in my PJs. So that's always fun. My Leo rising loves that. So anyway, today we're going to talk about timelines. My work as a reality architect revolves a lot on helping people to create the reality that they're wanting to experience, which is just a really fancy way of saying that I shift people into the reality that allows for them to, with greater ease, experience what it is they're manifesting. And it could be anything from wanting to pull money in. I had a client one time who literally received $10,000 the day after we did timeline work around his finances. I've helped people through mental health stuff. I've helped people through physical health stuff. It's not a fix-all. It's not a magical thing. Sometimes your soul chooses to experience things coming into this life, and I can't negate that because it is something that your soul wants to experience despite the fact that it's uncomfortable for you. But I can help you rise above things that are challenging you. I can help you move past cycles. It's an interesting line of work. But you guys asked me some questions about what I've learned about timelines and about my work with timelines. And you guys asked some really great questions. And so I'm really excited to talk about these. So I'm going to start with the first questions that were asked and work my way up through the most recent. So the first question that you guys posted was, and this is from, actually, I'm not going to say who it's from. If you want to come in and claim your question, feel free to. But the first question that I received is, I'm curious how Reiki factors in. How does that shift timelines? Also, how did you realize you could do this? And were you taught by a guide? So these are some really great questions. So first of all, when they ask about Reiki, what they're referring to, I offer something called timeline Reiki. This is something that I usually only use for large groups. For one-on-one sessions, I do full-blown timeline jumping. I'm not getting in there and spreading energy to help your timeline. I am helping you jump from one experience to another reality experience. And again, I've had people experience this. It can be as small as feeling like you, which this is not small, but it's not as physically evident. Feeling like you can make decisions that were difficult for you to make previously. I've also had people experience like literal Mandela effects, but on a very large scale. But the Reiki factors in because it is a term that my guides gave me for the type of energy work that I'm doing for large groups of people. And this is what I do when I go live on TikTok or Instagram, which I haven't done a live in a very, very long time. Actually, my next live I'm hoping will be here on YouTube because I'm kind of trying to transition all my stuff over to YouTube right now. But when I work with large groups of people, I essentially do for your timeline what Reiki does for your energy body. I share different types of energy that move the collective that is viewing the timeline Reiki session, whether it's live or recorded, from one collective experience to another collective experience. And again, I've had people experience various different types of shifts, changes from that timeline work, as well as like physical and energetic feelings while I'm doing the work. So it's not necessarily that it is actual Reiki, because they also ask, how does that shift timelines? Reiki can help you shift timelines in that it can help move old energy out. It can help you break cycles that you've been stuck in for a while, which can shift you into other timelines. But Reiki itself is not supposed to be a practice that is directly used for shifting timelines. I call it timeline Reiki, again, because that is a term that my guides gave me. That's it. I don't take credit for that. My guides were like, hey, call this timeline Reiki because it's a fun little term that people will like because people know what Reiki is. But you're doing it on timelines. So that's the explanation for that. Also, how did you realize you could do this, and were you taught by a guide? So I did this in a past lifetime. So this is one of those things where like you guys are going to get to know me really well as I make this content. I believe in some really woo-woo shit. Like really woo-woo. And either you're my tribe and you're going to be here for it, or that's okay if it's not your jam. It's not going to hurt my feelings. Please know that. If you watch this and you're like, oh, that's fine with me. I believe in star beings. I'm pretty sure I've talked about this. I channel star beings a lot. I believe in past lives. I believe that I lived many, many, many past lives in Arcturus. Okay. Arcturus is a star system in the Boots constellation, and Arcturians deal a lot with technology, but their technology does not look like what we consider technology, metal and hardware and programming. Okay, that is what we view technology as humans. Their technology looks very spiritual to us, but their technology is meant to be plugged into the energy that makes up our reality. That's my work within the Arcturus system. I worked in several past lifetimes to master timeline work. So I was working with a practitioner. She's a friend of mine. Her name is Kayla Shanks. She has a TikTok as well as a Instagram. She is an absolutely amazing energy practitioner. She was doing some work on me, and we were doing an energy exchange. So I was doing work on her as well. But at this point I was only doing channeling. And so I started tuning into things, all this stuff. After she had done this work, it opened some kind of floodgate for me. And my guides started talking to me about timelines. And I was like, okay, Kayla, I think I'm supposed to be tuning into timelines for you. And so I started, it was a bit of a fumble at first. But I started kind of like listening to my guides talking to me about what I needed to tune into, what I was able to do, walking me through a really, really rudimentary version of what I now do for people in sessions. So it also says, were you taught by a guide? Yes and no. To begin with, yes. they were walking me through how to do things. When I would do sessions for people, which were mostly free sessions that I did for friends, and a lot of them were trades, energy trades, I remember they would kind of like, okay, you need to call this in. Okay, you need to imagine this. Okay, you need to tell them that this is happening. Okay, now you're going to push them through this door. And it was very much like my guides kind of walking me through the process. And after I did that, probably 5 or 6 times, they were like, all right, well, you're ready to remember the rest of it on your own. And so that's kind of been my journey since then, is just remembering what this work is, what timelines are, how they work. It's very interesting to me because I think a lot of people want to fit the concept of timelines within our conscious understanding of the way that our universe works currently. And it doesn't. Time is not linear. You are living every single lifetime in every single place that you've ever lived in right now, currently. But then also you will live there in the future after you finish this lifetime. And you can also access information from those timelines, even the ones that you are going to move on to after this, that you lived in the past, because you're simultaneously already experiencing them. The way that they have explained it to me, and I may be answering someone else's question here, I don't think that I am, but the way that they've explained it to me is that, like, when we view timelines, we view it like a string. And there's an event here, and an event here, and an event here, and an event here, and they all affect each other. And they do all affect each other. But time is more like an ocean. And this is why jumping timelines is so precarious. Because if you stick your hand in, you could end up in any particular moment. And even I don't fully grasp it. My guides have shared with me where I will be going after I leave here. And so right now I'm in the midst of grappling with dealing with, this is my current lifetime, and then I'm going to this lifetime after that. And it's a lot to deal with. But this has been many, many past lifetimes for me, is just dealing with the timeline stuff. And it is a mindfuck. I will not lie to you. It is a mindfuck. But yeah, so it's been a lot of just remembering how to do this. Working with clients who have been just so incredibly amazing and patient with me as I move them through the process, but we always get to the end result, always. Okay. Are there people who seek to jump timelines who aren't able to because they're not cosmically aligned to be moving forward at this time? So this is a really great question. I have had a couple of different people who have wanted me to help them jump timelines who weren't able to for various reasons. And sometimes it is because they are not in alignment with being able to make that jump yet. And it could be because, and this is why I always tell people, I need you to come into the session with 3 or 4 things that you want to work on. And we'll start with the one that's most important to you. And if I tune in and your guides tell me, hey, like I had someone one time who their guides told me they're already in alignment with that. They are about to experience that, but there is this short 4 or 5 month series of events that they have to experience before they can begin experiencing this. So sometimes it's just that you haven't learned the lessons that you needed to learn before getting you there. I've also had people who, as you were saying, they were not aligned with moving forward at that time for one reason or another. You know, your guides, I always invite your guides into the session, and I always get them to kind of lead me through what it is that you need to experience. One of the things that I tell people is at the beginning of the session, you get to choose either We can work with very specific areas of your life, drawing in abundance, a career change, having children, feeling better about your health. Or I can tune into your guides and I can allow them to lead us through the timeline jump to get you to where they feel you need to be. And you have to remember that your guides take into account what it is you're wanting to experience. So they lead us through the session and get us to an endpoint where you're on a timeline that allows for you to, with greater ease, experience what it is you're wanting to experience. And I'm going to be honest with you, those are the most powerful. Hands down. I've had clients who have had deities come in that they had signed up with this deity before coming in to be an emissary of sorts for this deity here on earth. And they began that work as soon as that was done. And they got like this massive level up. And one of the individuals that I worked with who did experience this, she was even experiencing like parts of her city changed, looked completely different from the way that it did before our session. So yes, there are a lot of times, especially if you come into the session with something that you're specifically wanting to experience, there is a slight possibility that your guides will tell me they're not ready for this yet. Sometimes it's just that you're holding yourself back from it in some way. Either your ego or an old pattern that we need to shed for you, an old cycle that we need to jump into another timeline where you've already shed that. But for some people, their guides are very adamant that they're just not ready for that yet. So, okay. Next question. I think I've learned that we split and merge and split and merge. When we merge, is it always onto our highest vibe timeline? So yes and no. So you did include the word vibe, highest vibrational timeline. Your highest vibrational timeline is always the timeline in which you are in fullest alignment with your higher self. That is how I define that. Okay. It is, and when we are in when we are in vibrational alignment with our higher selves, we are in the highest vibrational frequency that we can currently experience within our physical vibration. Okay. That our body can hold at that time, that our soul can vibrate at that time with what we've done, what we've released, and the density that we've allowed ourselves to remain in. So when we shift into another timeline, and this is more of like a general, when you are sitting at home and you experience a timeline shift, okay? And my guides are wanting me to share this with you guys. A really, really good way that you can tell that you have shifted timelines is to ask your guides for some kind of synchronicity that they will give you when the timeline shifts. So for me, I get a ringing in my left ear. So every time I shift timelines, my left ear starts ringing. So ask your guides for something similar. It could be a ringing in your left ear. It could be some kind of sensation on your hand. It could be a numeric synchronicity. It could be you see wings. It could be whatever it needs to be for you. You can ask for that, but it needs to be something specific, and it needs to be something that you have not assigned to any other thing. Okay. So when we shift timelines, just in an everyday shifting sense, sometimes we shift into a higher vibrational timeline. Sometimes we shift into a vibrational timeline that is in alignment with the decisions that we've been making for ourselves. So what I mean by that is that all of us came into this life with specific cycles, or all of us came into this life with karmic patterns that we dragged in with us from past lives. And as we have lived through this life, all of us have accumulated cycles and patterns. Our work here in this density is to work through all of that, to untangle it and release it, to accept it as part of ourselves and learn how to work with it to create our highest timeline rather than having it work us. So what I mean by that is that when you are, for instance, allowing your fear to make decisions for you, typically that is not in alignment with your highest vibrational timeline. Okay. So when you experience a timeline shift that is in alignment with the fear-based decisions that you've made, that's not shifting into a higher vibrational timeline. But that does not mean that it is not the timeline that you needed to be in. Okay. You making that decision simply tells your guides, okay, that's fine. We just need to study a little bit more about this fear pattern that they're experiencing. And then you'll be given another decision later down the road that is very reflective of that previous decision that you made. And if you make a different decision this time, then it could align you with that higher vibrational timeline, moving you towards what you're wanting to experience. I really hope that that makes sense. That's a more complex question. Higher vibrational timelines really, really require for us to be in alignment with our higher self, which means that ego is not making the decision for us. It's weighing in, it's offering its opinion, but it's not driving the car. It's just in the backseat, acting like it knows what it's doing. So if you have further questions about that, please feel free to ask them down below. But timelines and being on highest timelines is a more complex subject to talk about. But if there's one thing that you could take away from this question, please know that whatever timeline you're on right now is the one that you need to be on to learn what you need to learn to eventually get to that highest vibrational timeline. You're always where you need to be, even if it's an uncomfortable situation. Okay. All right. Next question. I have experienced timeline shifts that seemed to have an interference energy with them, causing a lot of stress in the body. There is some talk recently about a timeline now where there is a galactic contact and ships in the sky. I observe, but don't necessarily believe that talk about it. But this time I think it's possible that it could be a reality. So this wasn't really a question, but I like what this person is talking about. And so I wanted to mention this. So the first thing that they're talking about is that sometimes when they experience timelines, it feels a timeline shift. It feels like interference within the body and it causes a lot of stress. This is a real thing. Okay. And the reason that this happens is because especially when we shift into, and this typically only happens actually when we shift into a much higher vibrational frequency than we were in, a much higher vibrational frequency timeline than we were in. And the reason that you feel this is because, one, resistance rises in the body. This timeline is asking of you changes or new patterns or the releasing of old patterns. It's asking you to move in a new, different way than you were on that old timeline. And because of that, it can create emotional instability. It can create emotional and mental uncomfortability, but it can also create how do I say this? It can create dissonance that occurs within your physical body because you're in a higher vibrational timeline, especially because higher vibrational timelines, again, require for us to align with our highest self, which means that even from a physical standpoint, we need to be making decisions as though we are our higher self, or as close as we can get right now. So it can cause a lot of it moves you into a space of needing to making sure that you're meditating, making sure that you're drinking all the water that you need to drink, making sure that you're sleeping as best you can and for as long as you can, at least within 8 to 10 hours. It calls on us to shed, and that can be very uncomfortable. Let's see. And then they also talk about galactic contact. And this is my wheelhouse. I've been doing work with the Galactic Federation. I did it way before I worked with timelines, channeling these beings. And they've been talking to me about contact happening since I first got in touch with them. And that was probably in 2018. But they've been talking about open contact happening since the 50s, when people first started channeling beings from other systems, back in the 80s and 70s, when they were channeling the Galactic Federation and Ashtar Sharon and General Hatton. Ooh, I'm getting some energy from this as I talk about it. Hold on just a minute. I just got a little lightheaded. So this has been a huge thing for me, is us having this galactic contact. And honestly, my favorite source, my favorite person to watch videos about, who has talked about this endlessly since he began his work back in the 80s, is Daryl Anka, who is the channel for Bashar. And Bashar is the name that we know this star being by. That's not his actual name. But it means messenger, which is what he is. He gives us these messages from his people. And his mission, working in tandem with Daryl Anka, is to help get us ready for this galactic contact. Okay? And the thing about this is, if you struggle to believe this, Daryl Anka actually predicted 9/11. He predicted a stock market crash. He predicted, I'm pretty sure, the war in the Middle East. There are a couple of things that Bashar does not like to predict things because of how unstable timelines can be. But if there is something that has a really great probability of happening, and that can happen, there is something that there are certain events that something on the level of a miracle would have to stop them from happening, because they're so aligned within the timeline, collectively or personally. And a lot of times it's things that we've chosen to experience, or things that a lot of decisions have been made that are already lining up that event to happen. And so he has told us about those types of things ahead of time. And one of those things is contact, which he believes will be happening within 2026, 2027. But he even has a program that is called 2027, the year everything changes. But this is something that they have talked to me about regularly, that I have made videos about, because it just comes in so strongly. Every single time that I channel about it, it comes in so strongly. So yes, the messages that I have gotten about this, the timeline that we are on right now, shows us having contact within the next couple of years, 2026, 2027. It shows us joining the Galactic Federation, which, for those of you who, a point of reference for the Galactic Federation is the Federation of Planets from Star Trek. Okay. And we'll have our own Earth Federation, which will join the Galactic Federation. It's a lot. But that's the best example that I can give you of what this will be like. But yeah, it just continues to become stronger and stronger within our collective timeline that we'll be experiencing that within the next couple of years. It's why we've had so many, like an uptick in UFO sightings and alien sightings and all of the things. We now have whole TikTok channels that are dedicated just to searching for UFOs. All right, last question. This may not be a timeline question specifically. If so, tuck it away for another chat. But when we shift timelines, that allows us to remember, many of us, many past lives, earthbound and intergalactic. When we start remembering our past lives, how does that work? In my little brain, it seems overwhelming to remember all of that. My guides say it will be a knowing, but it seems overwhelming. If you have any more information on this, it would be great to hear. Thank you. So it does seem overwhelming. And here's what you have to remember. The way that because I looked at these questions before I put them on here, just kind of generally deciding how I was going to answer them. And my guides gave me a great example of this. You don't right now remember every single event that happened in your lifetime unless you have some sort of brain capacity that is able to remember every single stimuli that it has taken in over its life. Okay? You don't remember every single mundane thing. So what you're envisioning, or at least what I'm getting from your question, is that you'll get this download of like 100,000 different past lives and every single cup of tea you've had and every single person that you've met. That is not what I feel like this is going to be. There is certain information that you've learned in many different past lives. Okay? That will be the strongest information that comes in for you because it has been reverberated and confirmed for you over many lifetimes. Okay? So for those of you that have been magical practitioners in many past lifetimes, your magic will get a boost if you're studying now, or you may feel called to your magic because you remember that practice from your past lives. You'll remember what it was like to live within a Pleiadian society if you lived with one, what that high vibrational feeling was like if you're from Arcturus, from the 12th dimension. Many of us will have an understanding of what it is like to die and for our souls to pass into the afterlife and to go through the process of making a decision of where you're going to go next. Many of us will remember soul family individuals that have incarnated with us over and over and over and over again throughout many past lives. And we may even remember who they were to us in past lives. We'll remember, I think it's going to be more of like, we'll remember what's important. We'll remember the truth of who we are as eternal souls. It's not going to be like, oh, I remember every single favorite color I ever had and every single article of clothing. The more mundane day-to-day life stuff, I don't think it's going to be super overwhelming like that. I think it's going to be, oh, I now remember how to perform Reiki, how to do what I call Reiki and what the Pleiadians call X, Y, and Z at a whole new capacity because I now have a greater understanding of how to work with that energy. I remember, I think for some people, it's going to be, I remember this thing that I invented in Lemuria. I remember this spiritual technology that I used in Sirius that I can now bring back here into this lifetime. So I feel like one of the things that we're going to experience with this is this whole new wave of invention, this whole new wave of people discovering how to work with energy, this whole new wave of people moving in the direction of technological expansion in a way that works in tandem with Mother Gaia and her healing. There's like a lot of, I'm trying to think of like, I can't for the life of me think of a single fantasy world where they have all of this technology. And I'm sure someone out there is going to watch this and they'll be like, oh, what about this? But like where they are working with the earth, not against the earth, not plundering everything that she has, not absorbing the life from her so that we can live in this comfortable lifestyle, but working with her, allowing her to flourish while we flourish alongside her, but still getting to experience a quote unquote technologically advanced society. That is what I think we're going to experience, because that's what all of these other lifetimes on other planets, that was our experience. And so we bring that back here. So I don't think that it's going to be as overwhelming as you're thinking that it is. I think it's going to be, you also have to understand that when this happens, okay, this great remembering, and a lot of people are associating this event with the Great Solar Flash. And again, just to kind of pause on the Great Solar Flash, a lot of people think that it's going to be this like huge EMP pulse or an actual physical massive solar wave that hits us, or solar flare that hits us. I don't think that that is what it is going to be. I think it might come in tandem with a large solar flare. But when I've talked to my guides about what the solar flare is, I've asked them, like, I'm burping as I'm saying this because this is coming through. My guides are channeling for me to talk about this right now, because I think there's a lot of people who are scared of this event. And it's because so many people are like, oh, the Great Solar Flash, it's going to hit and we're going to lose all of our electronics and we're going to be thrown back into an archaic age where we didn't have electricity. Okay, number one, electricity is a naturally occurring event. Okay? It's not something that we created. It existed before we learned to harness it. It's not going to magically disappear from the earth because of a massive solar flare. Okay? Could we potentially experience the grid going down for a couple of days? Yes, but it would be fixed. Okay? When I have tuned in about this, it is not going to be some huge destructive event that will send humanity back into the dark age. That is not what they have told me. What they have told me is that it's going to be more energy based. It's going to be this huge wave of energy that awakens those who haven't been awakened, that helps those who still need to step into that remembrance of past lives to do so, that raises our vibrational frequency. It's like the last push for us into 5D. It gives us the upgrades that we need. It pushes us into a different timeline. I do think it's going to have some confusion that comes along with it, because so many people are going to experience such an immense shift. But it's not going to be as scary as many people have chalked it up to be thus far. But there is going to be an immense inner knowing, an immense remembering that comes with that. And that remembrance is going to create a huge shift within our, not only our collective consciousness, but our collective experience here. Yeah. So I hope that helps with understanding that. If not, again, ask some questions down below. I would love to keep doing more of these. You don't have to ask me questions just about timeline shifts. Ask me any question. I did want, for those of you who got this far, I wanted to hear, if I did a live Q&A here on YouTube, who would show up with some questions? What would you want to know about? I'll probably get questions ahead of time like I'm doing right now. And if anybody has questions to kind of build upon what was already asked, we can address those. But I would love to do a live Q&A here on YouTube. I love interacting with you guys. You guys have been super supportive thus far. But that was all my questions that I have for today. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. And I love you guys, and I really appreciate y'all being here. And as always, you are so incredibly beautiful. You are pure fucking magic. You are deeply and irrevocably loved, and you are never alone. Mwah.